Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. So what we're going to do today is take a closer look at IGF-1. IGF-1 is also known as insulin-like growth factor 1. If you want to know its full name, it's a really intriguing anabolic hormone that really has shown to be an excellent addition to any PED cycling regimen of bodybuilders and athletes. So what I'm going to do is take a closer look at IGF-1's action and what results you can expect from its use and what potential side effects that you need to watch out for as well. Now, it's naturally produced by the liver, and it's a hormone similar in structure to insulin, and hence the name, insulin-like growth factor. Now, during childhood, it is one of the primary hormones responsible for growth, and it remains a really powerful precursor to cell growth in adults, something bodybuilders and athletes have naturally taken interest in, obviously. Now let's look at IGF-1 in action. When it comes to its effect on the body, IGF-1 shares many of the same traits as HGH does. And that's obviously to be expected. HGH is actually a precursor to IGF-1, and it signals for its release when the HGH binds to its receptors. It's the IGF-1 that stimulates muscle growth and promotes protein anabolism. Now, IGF-1 is actually highly anabolic, and it's going to promote both muscle hypertrophy and growth and hyperplasia, which is the formation of new muscle cells. And that's the key here, is the hyperplasia. While the level of muscle growth from IGF-1 use is likely to be less than most anabolic steroids, the hyperplastic effects of IGF-1 are so desirable, and can't be achieved from steroids, which merely, hypertrophies the existing muscle tissue. So that's a really important factor here to keep in mind. In addition, and of particular interest to athletes, IGF-1 has a positive effect on connective tissue and cartilage repair, making it a superb compound to run during rehab and heavy training phases within the year. Now, unlike HGH, IGF-1 doesn't appear to directly cause heightened fat mobilization, and that's interesting because many users of the hormone do note that it has the ability to maintain body fat levels during periods of high calorie consumption, but it's likely, down to the insulin-like effect of IGF-1, which promotes a state of lower blood sugar. And this is an important note, and I'm going to cover that when I discuss the side effects. Now, let me explain the difference between IGF-1 LR3 and IGF-1 DES. Now, when most people talk about IGF-1, they're actually talking about the LR3 variation of it. Not always, but most generally. Now, having a really short half-life, less than 10 minutes, and being very acutely unstable, IGF-1 in its base form is not commonly used by bodybuilders or athletes. The two popular variations are LR3 and DES, and they're both modifications of the base protein, and they possess superior qualities for use, less sensitive, more potent, and a much longer half-life. So now let's look at LR3. While IGF-1 in its base has a half-life of less than 10 minutes, LR3's half-life is about a day, so about 24 hours. And with such a long and extended half-life, it has a greater time frame to circulate around the body and bind to receptors and exert its effects. With LR3, it's not necessary nor effective to perform any sort of site-specific injections because the hormone is going to have ample opportunity to propagate from the injection site due to its half-life. Now, let's look at DES. Now, this one has the shorter, more potent variation that's available. It has a half-life of like 30 minutes, and it's for more, far more unstable than LR3. Now, site-specific injections using DES can actually be, really effective and worthwhile with bodybuilders typically injecting the muscle group they're about to train pre-workout. Now, the theory behind this is actually quite sound. Let me explain. High lactic acid buildup will cause the IGF-1 receptors to be far more accepting. So when you inject into a muscle group that's about to be trained, it should provide the best results. Pre-workout site injections are taking advantage of the inbuilt biological response which naturally occurs during a workout. Lactic acid builds up in the muscle being worked, and that signals for the release of HGH and IGF-1 to actually help repair the micro-traumatized muscle tissue. Now, the body's really smart, and the IGF-1 ends up where it's needed, and it's binding to the receptors which have been deformed by the lactic acid. So let's talk about cycle doses and results. The first thing that must be said is that IGF-1 is an advanced hormone, and it should only be considered by those with several anabolic steroid cycles under their belts. IGF-1 is not going to produce the sort of muscle mass or strength gains that you can expect from steroids either, as I've already said. If you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, then you're going to want to run a cycle of test and Winstrol, D-ball, Anadrol. You know what I'm talking about. Just a general steroid cycle. IGF-1 does provide several really unique qualities which are highly prized by many advanced bodybuilders and athletes. As I mentioned, IGF-1 can do something which no steroid can, and that's increase the actual number of muscle cells you possess by hyperplasia. And no longer are trainers limited by their genetics. IGF-1 levels up the athlete's potential by increasing the number of muscle cells, which can be further hypertrophied through training and steroid cycles. Now, for athletes, IGF-1 provides, a hard-to-detect hormone that's, unmistakably aids performances, it reduces recovery time, and it pushes the envelope for people who are already at the limits of their genetic potential. Now, a good starting point for dosing would be about 40 micrograms per day, and strangely and quite unwisely in my view, it really isn't uncommon to see a daily dose of 100 micrograms recommended by a lot of people online. But in my experience, with this sort of, dose, it's totally unnecessary, and I wouldn't recommend a dose, over 100 micrograms for anybody, even the most advanced trainers with considerable IGF-1 experience. Now, IGF-1 LR3 should be injected intramuscularly, okay? And given its longer half-life, it's not necessary to site inject. So, just like I pointed out earlier. Now, a typical IGF-1 cycle is going to last about 4 weeks, and it's going to yield the best results when you stack it with other steroids, because that's going to amplify its effects. Now, the thing to remember is you're unlikely to see, really spectacular results. It's the cherry on the cake for advanced athletes and bodybuilders who are happy to see, half a pound or a pound of extra quality muscle gain per week, and, an expectation of more longer-term benefits. Now, a lot of people use it as a bridge in between cycles as well. So, when administering IGF-1 DES, the doses used are fairly similar with about 20 to 40 micrograms per day. Now, you can actually use that as site injection, as I said, pre-workout on whatever muscle group you're working. So here's some side effects that you need to watch out for. Accelerated tumor growth, heightened risk of cancer, and enlargement of internal organs are all potential side effects of IGF-1 use. I don't encourage anyone to take illicit substances, including IGF-1, but it would seem particularly unwise to use it if you have any family history of cancer whatsoever. It really behaves in a similar way to insulin. And, its use tends to lead towards a really hypoglycemic state. And this is something that everyone should take note of, but especially for those who abuse, or use or abuse insulin and are planning to use IGF-1 at the same time. Headaches and nausea, sometimes really severe cases of both, are fairly common imminent side effects reported when using IGF-1, but they kind of appear to be dose dependent. So that's IGF-1 for you. That's a closer look at it. I've talked about it before, but not in this great a detail. So I really wanted to get all the info out there for everybody, and I truly hope this helped. So that being said, stay tuned for plenty more videos to come. Dylan Gemelli, signing off.